May I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathering here today, the Wurundjeri people. And I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and of course any who may be here amongst us today. And of course to Michael Camilleri, State Director of CEDA, Honourable Stephen Martin, the CEO, Oliver Yates, Simon DeBell, Matthew Robinson. To all of you, thank you very much and good afternoon, and I certainly have been looking forward to the opportunity to join with you today and of course to share in the Victorian Government's vision for a renewable energy future. I wish to also though pass some remarks regarding the passing of Matt Zima. Matt certainly contributed a great deal to the energy industry throughout many, many years. And of course, his career has been a very illustrious one, starting from the days of the Vencor back in Victoria, the very early days of deregulation and privatisation. And his wealth of knowledge and expertise in this area, I know, will be very, very sorely missed. Certainly on a personal level, my condolences are there, certainly for his family and friends. But I think it is very important that my comments today do not commence until I've given due regard and respect to Matt's legacy. I wish to, of course, now commence the official part of my contribution today. And I'm very, very pleased, of course, that the opportunity is one that comes on the back of some very recent and exciting announcements that have been made by our government. But let me also reflect on CEDA forums, and they certainly provide us with a very important opportunity to discuss and debate critical questions facing policy makers. And of course, this includes questions facing our national electricity market, a market that has come under significant scrutiny over many, many years, but more so, of course, in particular over the past 2 months. And in particular, we've seen questions raised regarding the contribution of renewable energy to high price events in the South Australian wholesale market, and whether this is a predictor or a precursor of what might happen in other states, and so that it's important for me to make some comments on this. And so the opportunity, of course, at this forum provides me with the opportunity to address some of the questions, if you like, and to set out our government's vision for Victoria's wholesale electricity market. Any market must evolve through time, no matter what that market is, and it must change and adapt to new technologies and policy objectives. The national electricity market is not immune to this, and nor should it be. The Victorian Government acknowledges changing technologies may require some adaptation of the existing structures and obligations to ensure that the market can accommodate their performance and capabilities. And this includes consideration of how, for example, large-scale battery storage can be delivered and used to support demand. Therefore, our government has and will continue to be active in supporting changes to the regulatory framework that ensures the NEM continues to deliver in the long-term interest of consumers. However, recent price events, of course, in the South Australian wholesale electricity market have led some commentators and even a handful of politicians to claim that renewable energy is creating an energy market crisis. That's a very, very strong concept. In fact, we've seen federal government members such as Senator Chris Back even call for a moratorium on wind farms. So here we go again. But any claim that renewable energy is in itself and by itself creating a volatile wholesale market is simplistic and wrong. Price fluctuations have occurred in the national electricity market since its commencement in 1998. These fluctuations can be attributed to a number of reasons, including participant behaviour, network constraints which, for example, can be caused by interconnector upgrades, outages or changes to the energy mix. They have occurred long before renewable energy contributed to 40% of South Australia's energy generation. In fact, when you observe spot prices over the past 15 years, you cannot claim that renewable energy drives price volatility in the market. As many of you, of course, will be aware, the Australian Energy Regulator is required to publicly report on high price events, and in particular, they are obliged to prepare a report in the event the spot price for a trading interval exceeds $5,000 per megawatt hour. So based on data from the Australian Energy Regulator, which is published, we know that for the last 15 years there have been 479 trading intervals above the $5,000 per megawatt hour threshold. In 2015 to 16, when wind energy represented approximately 40% of total generation in South Australia and 6% in Victoria, we had just 6 trading intervals above $5,000 per megawatt hour. In contrast, during the 2009 and 10 period, we had 95 trading intervals above $5,000 per megawatt hour across the NEM. So in South Australia alone, the spot price exceeded $5,000 per megawatt hour 47 times for the 2009-10 financial year. At this time, wind energy contributed only 14% towards the state's energy generation. So if you're not still up with me in terms of all of these figures, I think they're important to have out there. During a 4-day period in November 2009, the spot price in South Australia exceeded $5,000 per megawatt hour for 14 trading intervals, with 13 of these prices hitting the cap. So when this occurred, the Australian Energy Regulator reported that it was the bidding behaviour of participants which significantly contributed to the high-priced events, not renewables. So in July 2016, with the recent hysteria coming from some quarters, and I think debate is healthy, but there are limits. You would have been led to believe that we're experiencing a throwback to the 4-day period of November 2009, when with 14 plus trading intervals above 5,000 megawatt point. But the fact is, in July 2016, there were only 3 in this past month alone. So it's been well documented. These 3 price events were driven by a variety of factors: a cold snap, gas-fired generators in South Australia facing high gas prices, and significant constraints on South Australia's main electricity interconnector. So it is worthwhile for us to touch on 2 of these matters. Firstly, on gas. What we do know is that the East Coast gas market is in urgent need of reform as the market transitions towards increased exports of LNG. That is nothing that is a surprise to most of us. Successive reports by both the ACCC and the AEMC have confirmed that the East Coast market is not competitive and lacks transparency and liquidity. So without reform, gas prices on the East Coast will be higher than they should otherwise be. So it's vital that the COAG Energy Council takes action in this space to drive reforms to increase information to market participants and to improve pipeline access arrangements to help ensure that gas can be transmitted to those locations where it is needed the most. Secondly, it's important to emphasise that the South Australian and Victoria interconnector that services around about 16% of South Australia's annual demand for electricity was being upgraded to support additional capacity into South Australia. So what we have here is the occurrence of a range of coincident events and factors that have driven wholesale prices to higher levels. Now, I'm not suggesting that the South Australian, Victorian, or indeed the national wholesale electricity market is not facing change. Of course it is. Of course it is. But let's be rational and clear about identifying what are the causes of the challenges that we're facing. It's only when we do that that we can actually address those challenges and do it in a way that is fair and reasonable. So commentators claiming that our wholesale electricity market is in crisis because of renewable energy on its own is simply not right. It is wrong. So what we need is a collegiate and measured approach by the COAG Energy Council towards how this change is embraced and managed. In Victoria's view, the COAG Energy Council needs to take leadership on how renewable energy can be supported by our national electricity market framework. For example, maybe the time has come to consider whether our national electricity objectives should take into consideration the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Now, that is a discussion that has been had in a very timid way over a number of years, but perhaps the time is now for us to actually deal with that seriously. Such an amendment would ensure the decisions of our energy market institutions help to support the decarbonisation of electricity generation. This amendment would also be consistent with how energy and climate change policy is now being treated by the Victorian and federal governments. That is, by combining the energy and climate change portfolios together. So we know, of course, Minister Frydenberg has recently said that energy and climate change policies are two sides of the same coin. However, at the moment, climate change and energy policies reside on different chords in the federal policy sphere. We need to understand exactly what it looks like to have them on either side of the one coin. Our government, the Andrews Labor government, is acting to increase renewable energy generation in Victoria. We've said that. We're doing this because we want to create Victorian jobs, we want to ensure a sustainable source of energy, and we want to reduce emissions. We want to reduce emissions because our government recognises that climate change is a critical policy challenge globally, necessitating strong leadership from all jurisdictions globally, including subnational jurisdictions. We are committed to showing leadership and taking serious action on climate change. Our government has committed to put into legislation a long-term target for our state of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, which will be achieved through interim targets every 5 years. Meeting the long-term emissions target means increasing renewable energy in Victoria. It is not the only response, but it is a critical part of that. Therefore, this government is acting now to increase renewable energy generation in our state. Now, since the Abbott and Turnbull governments brought Australia's climate change and renewable policies to a bit of a standstill, we lack a clear vision beyond 2020 for a national approach to renewable energy. Now, that's only 3.5 years away. The record of the recent federal governments regarding energy and climate change policy has been, and I say this frankly, quite dismal and completely out of step with not just our Australian community and business sentiment, but of course the rest of the world. The price on carbon was removed, making us the only country in the world to ever remove carbon price. A price that had started to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the electricity sector and send a clear signal for alternative types of investment. They placed the federal renewable energy target scheme in a perpetual state of uncertainty and then slashed it again, making us the only country in the world to ever do so. And of course, we saw the establishment of the politically motivated and expensive Wind Farm Commissioner. Now, this has meant that without the action taken by various state and territory governments in recent times, the national red would unlikely be met. And while I acknowledge that recently the language being used by the new federal minister is very encouraging, we need actions, not just words. Meanwhile, Victoria's commitment to renewable action will continue. We are more than prepared, and I will illuminate further in terms of what the next steps are in terms of our delivery of targets. Earlier this year, we set firm targets for the renewable energy generation for our state, 25% by 2020, 40% by 2025. And we agreed to deliver these targets through a reverse auction scheme, similar to that successfully implemented in the ACT. We wanted targets that will transform the energy market and provide the long-term certainty that industry needs to invest. Targets that would make renewable energy an inextricable part of the Victorian economy. Targets that would boost production to the levels necessary if we're to seriously address decarbonising the state. Our targets, of course, were the subject of broad consultation. We received over 1,300 submissions and held forums right across the state, including, of course, in and listening to the people of the Latrobe Valley. The targets we have set are ambitious, yet they are achievable. To reach the 40% figure, we will build up to 5,400 megawatts of new renewable generation capacity by 2025 in Victoria. That's up to 5,400 megawatts of brand new wind and solar farms and 4,000 new jobs in the peak year of construction alone. The scheme will result in around $9 billion in capital expenditure being invested in renewable energy projects and this will result in about $2.5 billion of direct economic activity in Victoria associated with construction and the operation of the projects, including large-scale solar. We will, of course, be setting aside 20% of our target of auctions for solar alone. The rest, of course, will largely be made up of wind energy, but not only, and it won't necessarily be restricted to that. We want to encourage a diverse renewable energy portfolio. Now that the targets, of course, are established, work begins on the detailed design of the auction scheme. We are a race against time to achieve our target, our first target, but we know that we can do it. So today I am very, very pleased to release the government's discussion paper on our VRET scheme. The paper commences the government's second consultation phase on Victoria's renewable energy future. It asks for feedback on the design elements of the scheme, including contract length and the quantum of energy capacity which will be auctioned off throughout the scheme. Importantly, it will also ask the question of what are the accompanying technologies that may need to sit alongside our VRET scheme. And that is important because ultimately, whilst we want to see an increase of renewable energy generation happening in Victoria, we also want to develop up a very strong industry, and that means, of course, improving our capability and being open to new technologies being utilised to sit alongside renewable energy. So in addition to the discussion paper, we will be holding public forums across Victoria on the VRET scheme, and I certainly want to make sure that we have as much input into that as possible. Now, that discussion paper will be available on the government's website from about 2:30 today for anyone who would be very eager to have a look at that. You should be able to get access to that quite readily. Our VRET scheme will represent the cornerstone of Victoria's Renewable Energy Action Plan. However, the VRET scheme represents the government's second policy initiative to drive renewable energy in Victoria. Since coming to government, we have listened to industry's call for us to take an active role and a very urgent step towards promoting renewable energy investment in the state. Now, we've responded with the Renewable Energy Certificate Initiative, which was announced last year, which is now bringing forward $200 million of investment in Victorian renewable energy projects. We've committed to buying the renewable energy certificates for government's electricity purchases direct from new build Victorian renewable energy facilities. These certificates will be generated from around 100 megawatts of wind-powered energy. And I'm pleased to say that I've recently signed those contracts with the first two successful tenderers, Mount Gellibrand Wind Farm developed by Acciona Energy and Kiata Wind Farm being developed by WindLab Limited. The Victorian Government will purchase certificates directly from these two companies to drive new projects to be built in this state. And we'll be creating 200 direct construction jobs and significant flow-on employment and economic development for the state. The initiative will generate sufficient electricity to power more than 50,000 households and will save the Victorian Government tens of millions of dollars coincidentally. That's a nice bonus. We are now looking at the second phase of this initiative, which will focus on large-scale solar, and more will be said about that in the coming months. The renewable energy targets and auction scheme will form a key element of our Victorian Renewable Energy Action Plan. However, we are also developing a range of other initiatives to support renewable energy at a range of levels, whether it be at utility, commercial, community or residential scale. The initiatives in the Action Plan will support long-term innovation and growth in Victoria's renewable energy sector. And this, of course, will help create more investment and develop new skills and jobs, while also reducing the state's greenhouse gas emissions. Complementing the Action Plan is our new energy technologies strategy, and I was very pleased to have released this a few months ago. Our government has identified that the new energy technologies sector is one of the 8 growth sectors vital to the future economic prosperity of Victoria. And that's why we recently released a strategy for the sector which focuses on investing in new energy generation technology, strengthening the sector, encouraging new consumer-driven markets and building statewide capabilities. So we want Victoria to capitalise on new and developing technologies, including renewable energy and energy storage, energy efficiency products and services are a vital part of this, and the growth of consumer-driven markets for new energy solutions. A key vehicle for investment will be the New Energy Jobs Fund, which has already shown there is a huge appetite for investment in Victoria, and this will support Victorian-based commercially ready new energy technology projects that create long-term jobs right across our state. Through this $20 million fund, we are determined to grow clean energy jobs and business opportunities. So in June, we announced the successful recipients of the first round of the fund. We had more than 90 applications received in the first round, with $39 million in funding sought for projects valued at over $300 million. So there are a lot of organisations and businesses out there with strong plans to build this state's new energy future. That is evident. Through the fund, we're aiming to increase the take-up of renewable energy generation, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, drive innovation in new energy technologies, and assist communities and businesses to develop renewable energy projects. Now, before I finish today, I do want to acknowledge the terrific work of the Clean Energy Finance Corporation and its partnership with Victoria. And certainly, Oliver, your presentation showed very clearly how strong that relationship is. The CEFC continues to support, of course, Victoria in our transition to a carbon-constrained economy. And I very much look forward, Oliver, to continuing our engagement, but certainly digging and delving deeper into how we can explore further the opportunities that are presented by our policy parameters, whether they are our new energy technology strategy to drive industry development and get more businesses actually located here and getting a strong capability here, but also, of course, our energy efficiency and productivity strategy, which is obviously dealing with the demand side, using less energy, doing more with it, and of course renewable energy. And importantly, just to address the issue that Oliver quite rightly said, a lot of the savings are going to come with improvements to how we actually build new infrastructure, and that is something that will also be reflected in our policy offerings. So I look forward certainly to continuing to work closely with you, Oliver, and your organisation as we progress and finalise our Renewable Energy Action Plan and energy efficiency and productivity strategies, both which will be released in the coming months. Our government recognises, of course, the importance of facilitating a smooth transition to a sustainable energy market. Therefore, we must establish a framework that further encourages the growth of renewable energy in Victoria and the sustainable jobs and environmental benefits this will bring. We will take every opportunity to work with our federal and state counterparts to drive this change. We need to do that. And I certainly look forward to the day where we put behind us, well and truly, the major contentious points which have got in the way of us progressing as a country along the lines of what is happening quite globally. That will be a very good day for all of us. However, the critical nature of climate change means our government cannot afford to wait, and which is why our government in Victoria we've taken the steps that I've articulated here today. So, plainly, my last message is that, in conclusion, there is no energy crisis, only a market that needs to evolve, and we should all be up for that as any market does evolve over time. So thank you very much for the opportunity and the opportunity to express to all of you what our vision is, and I'm really pleased, Simon, to take any questions or comments.